to Take Two with Freddy, the podcast where we talk about real life, second chances, and the power of rewriting your own story. I'm Freddy Freundlich, entrepreneur, mentor, and storyteller, and everything I share here comes straight from the heart. If I didn't walk it, I don't talk it. Each week, we'll laugh a little, reflect a lot, and hopefully walk away with a little more perspective than we had before. So here we go. What's on my mind today? Legacy. What does that mean, legacy? Well, let's try and figure it out together. This past week, a woman from my community passed away. Now, I never ever met her. I never heard her name before. And as far as I know, we never crossed paths. But after she died, I heard people whom I deeply respect talking about her. How kind she was, how much she gave to others, how much she cared. How good a woman she was. She sounded like a pretty remarkable human being. From what I understand, she was about 70 years old and had died from a heart attack. As far as that goes, she was just a regular person like you and me. She came into this world and now she's gone. Because I didn't personally know her, I won't mourn her. I won't miss her. But yet, I'm here talking about her. So, she clearly left an impression on me, a complete stranger, and I am now sharing her story with the whole world. Now, in my humble opinion, that's legacy. And let's look a little more into this and try to figure it all out. As most of us get older, we start asking ourselves questions like, what's the point of it all? Why am I here? What am I leaving behind? Why was I even put here on this earth? And folks, I don't have the answers. You know, I believe in a higher power. I call him God. I also know that I'm not him. But I've come to believe that each one of us is given a certain time on this earth. Some of us have a very short time. We pass very quickly. Some of us have a fair amount of time. And some of us, in our terms, have a long life. What's our terms? Maybe 80, even 100. In my tradition, 120 years is the go-to figure. But regardless of how long you actually live, even if you make it to 120, in the grand scheme of things, it's just a blink. Here today, gone tomorrow. In other words, we come and we go. But at the same time, most of us want our presence here to matter. We want to make a difference. And that's what legacy is all about. Now, there are people who leave visible legacies. They get bridges or airports named after them. Some of them even have monuments that tourists flock to from all over the world. There are people who history books remember them. And then there's you and me, where we don't have all that. Is there a difference? Let's find out. There are people who have a legacy that seems to go on. I don't want to use the word eternity because I have no idea what eternity means, but for a very long time. In other words, thousands and thousands of years. And the people that we read about in the Bible, they would fall into that category. Abraham, Moses, King David, King Solomon. They're all people who have left a legacy. But what about the people behind them, like their mothers and fathers? Does anybody know the names of Abraham's mother, of King Solomon's mother? Perhaps you do, but I can venture to guess that most people don't. In fact, let me talk about somebody who's not an Abraham, not a Moses, won't be remembered for eternity, but still has left a pretty nice legacy, at least in our lifetime. A gentleman by the name of Walt Disney. Now, I was surprised to hear that while the average person in the world has heard of Walt Disney, most people don't even realize that Walt Disney was a man, Mr. Walter Disney. And he is the man behind the magic. Now, he passed away decades ago. I remember as a kid, he was still around, but he passed away shortly after that. None of us are mourning him today. A few people mourned him when he passed. The majority of the world didn't mourn him specifically. And today, nobody's mourning him. Not even his great-grandchildren or who is ever around. They're certainly reaping the fruits of his labor, but they're not mourning him. Because you can't really mourn somebody who you didn't know. Now, everybody, or many people, let's say, even most people all over the world have been touched by Walt Disney's dream, by his legacy. I have, my children have, my grandkids have. They've been all touched by his dream. But what we need to remember that legacy and mourning are two very different things. You can only pretty much mourn someone you knew, and mourning is a temporary thing. It's just like everything else, it goes away with a bat of an eye. Once people move on or they pass, there'll be nobody left to mourn you. But you can touch someone, even someone you've never met, with your legacy. So this woman that I've been talking about, the one I don't know, as I said, I'll never mourn her. But I'm already carrying a seed she planted just by hearing other people speak of her. And that's what I want to talk about today. This woman did not know Freddy. She certainly didn't have a clue that shortly after her passing, this guy Freddy would not only be sharing her story, but would be sharing it on a podcast that would be listened to all over the world. This is what legacy is. And what it isn't fame. Sure, there are famous people who leave a legacy, but most legacy is not left by famous people. It's left by regular people. Because legacy is really about seeds, those small little things we plant. We plant in the ground and we plant in others. Some seeds take root right away. Others lie dormant for years until the right season, the right soil, the right storm, and then they suddenly bloom. And again, we're talking about nature and people. There are so many trees that we are enjoying today that were planted hundreds or thousands of years ago by people who never saw the fruits of their labor, but yet we're enjoying it. That's called legacy. We don't necessarily know their names. We can say thank you to them personally, but it's because of them, because they weren't selfish people. They weren't thinking about what's in it for me today. They were willing to bet on their legacy. Now, what's also wild is you don't always know which seeds are yours. Maybe it was something you said in passing, a moment you forgot, but yet someone else never did. And that's the thing. Legacy is not in our control. We can only plant. What grows is not up to us, but yet we still have to plant. That is, if we care about a legacy. You know, folks, lately I've been exploring the 12-step world. What the 12-step world is, and those of you who are not familiar, you've probably seen in movies or TV shows a story about an alcoholic and he gets involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, Alcoholics Anonymous is a program of recovery for alcoholics. There are many programs like it for people of other types of addictions or just people who have compulsive personalities. But there's a program, which is a very well-known program, which is based on a 12-step program. Well, one of those 12 steps is about making amends. In other words, going back and saying, I'm sorry to the people you hurt, if it's safe to do so. Now, it's a very powerful thing. I think it's a wonderful thing. I actually think any of us, regardless if we have an addiction or not, have done things in which we need to apologize. And while apologizing won't change what we had done, it'll go a long way to make the world a better place. But that's for another conversation. But this whole idea about going and making amends and saying, I'm sorry, got me to thinking about something else. What about saying thank you? You know, think about this. How often do we carry around guilt or shame over things we did wrong, things we didn't fix? We end up beating ourselves up. And that's why this step of making amends is so powerful. But what if we carried equal weight to the thank yous we've never said? There are a lot of people around us, people we know well, who we even take for granted. And we never took the opportunity to say, thank you. What you did really made a difference. But then there are people who don't even know they saved you or made any kind of impact in your life. It could be a teacher, a coach, or a friend, or it could be a slight acquaintance or a stranger. We tend to think that closure comes from apology, but maybe it also comes from gratitude. I know personally that at times in my life, people have come up to me, sometimes strangers, who would say things like, you don't know me, but I heard you speak a few years ago, and you said something which really resonated and made a difference. Whatever I said, or I read something in your book. Now, when I hear that, it's really powerful. It goes a long way. It gives me the impetus to want to share even more. Because when we plant the seeds, none of us get any payment out of it. We don't see it. We again, the people who planted those trees years and years and years ago, centuries ago, they got nothing out of it, except perhaps they got a good feeling knowing that one day there were people who would enjoy the shade from the tree. But by the time the trees were around, there was nobody who, they weren't alive to hear the thank you. But we can still say thank you to people. You know, in my life, I've had a number of angels. Some walked in and were with me a long time. Some were fly-by-nights, as you know, as ships pass through the night. Some of them, I didn't even know their name. Last week, I shared with you in last week's episode about the man. And again, the man is, in many respects, that adult figure, so many kids see as their enemy, their adversary. And I also spoke about the man, how the man continues with us as we get older. But alongside the man, which I personally had to deal with, I had angels. I had a number of angels. And one of them was Mr. Nilsson. Again, I talked about him in last week's episode and I wrote about him in my book. Mr. Nilsson and I were worlds apart. I mean, you really couldn't get any different. For lack of a better term, in those days, we would have called him a WASP, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. If anybody was the poster child in the 60s and 70s of the man, it would be somebody we describe as a WASP. And on top of that, he was also a man. So he was really the epitome of what the man was supposed to be about. And on top of that, Mr. Nilsson was not a simple guy. He was a big shot. He was a politician. He was a heavy hitter. He was big time businessman throughout the state of New Jersey. He was a big player. And here I was, this little 11-year-old Orthodox Jewish kid who came into his life. And what did he do? He embraced me. He mentored me. He literally and figuratively changed my life. Why did he do it? The truth is, I'll never know. There was no business deal. He wasn't courting votes. There was no logical reason for him to do it. But he did it. And again, I have no idea. Now, did I ever go back and say thank you to Mr. Nilsson? In fact, did I ever go back and say thank you to Mrs. Nilsson, who also, this could never have happened without her support? Of course, as a child, I would say thank you for this or thank you for that. But after I moved on and our lives separated and I started becoming a productive member of society, did I ever look him up, say, Mr. Nilsson, can we go have a cup of coffee and just look him in the eye and say thank you? No, I never did. And by the time I was mature enough to realize maybe I should, he had long passed. Yes, I talk about him, I thanked him in my book, but I will never have the chance to look him in the eye and say, thank you, Mr. Nilsson, you made a difference. That's the kind of regret I don't want to carry forward anymore. In my lifetime, many of the angels that have come across my path, I have no way of saying thank you. Some of them have passed. Some of them, as I said, I don't even know who they are. But I'll tell you right now, guys, I want to thank you, my audience, my listeners, because you at this moment have given me one of the goals in my life now is to try and reach out to those people of my past where I can and say thank you. And at times, maybe if I can't even do that, maybe I can say thank you to their children. I remember when my father passed away and condolence calls came in, there were people who told me things about my father, acts of kindness that he did, and how they were so grateful, which I never knew. And I can tell you, I really appreciated hearing about this. Let me tell you a quick story. Years ago, I worked for a big chemical company out of Atlanta, Georgia. And one day I was on the road and I got a message. And in those days, there were no cell phones. It was just beepers, pagers. So I was told to call the office and speak to Donna Ray. Donna Ray was the senior vice president in charge of human resources. And when I got this message, I panicked because I was fairly new with the company and I'm trying to figure it out. What did I do wrong? Why did she want to call me? Does she want to slap my hand? Do they want to fire me? What's going on here? So it took me a little bit of while, but I got up the nerve and I called her up and I said, hi, Donna, Freddy Freundlich, returning your call. And she said to me, hi, Freddy, I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Wow, that was it. My heart dropped, and I hung up the phone with her. And I asked you, what did it cost her for that? Absolutely nothing. But here I am, decades later, still remembering her name, still talking about that moment and sharing with you. That's a legacy. That one phone call changed my day, maybe even my week. And it probably changed how I treated the people around me, friends, family, customers, and strangers, which probably changed their day. That's how legacy works. That's the ripple effect. And now, thanks to you guys, I'm going to try and find Donna Ray. And hopefully I will find her, and hopefully I'll be able to say thank you. Now, Donna may not even appreciate as much as I'm appreciating it. She may not even remember. It may not even be a big deal. She may have done this to everybody in the company. But what does it matter? She did it. And it made a difference in my life. You know, I could write a book just about the angels I've met along the way. And maybe you guys have given me another idea. All sorts of people who came into my life. As I said, some I remember, some I don't, some I don't know their names. You know, I spoke in my book about a lawyer who stood up for me when I was just a scared kid. I don't know his name. I never saw him again. I don't know why he did what he did, why he went out on a limb for me, but he did. He was a stranger who showed up when I needed him most. That's part of my story. And these people, they create a legacy. And if possible, they deserve not only my gratitude, which I will have for them till my dying day, but again, if there's any way I can reach out, in this particular gentleman's case, there's absolutely no way because I have no idea who he was or even where to begin looking for him. But this, my friends, is what legacy is truly about. I'd like you folks to stop for a moment and just think. Who are the angels in your story? Who showed up for you when they didn't have to? Who saw something in you when no one else did? Who said a few kind words that somehow shifted your whole path? If you're lucky enough to have a name, and you can, don't wait. Today, say thank you. So here's where I would like to leave you guys today. You do matter. Your presence, your words, your smallest acts, they matter. And someone somewhere is carrying a seed in which you planted. Before the day ends, please find someone who helped you and say thank you. And if you're someone's angel, keep planting those seeds. And don't worry if they say thank you, because somewhere down the line, somebody is going to appreciate something that you did. And again, this is not about religion, or I don't want to get too out of the world here, but whether in this world or the next world, what goes around comes around. Your legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you leave within people. In their courage, in their choices, in their better days. That's what lasts forever. So folks, thanks for spending this time with me today on Take Two with Freddy. If something resonated with you today, if you got a little clarity or even just took a deep breath, that's a win. Every week I'll be here sharing stories, thoughts, and sometimes even advice, but only the kind I've earned the right to give. And if I ever get it wrong, call me out. I'm still learning too. Remember, there are comments below. Feel free to leave a comment. Good or bad, I appreciate all feedback. I really hope something in today's episode spoke to you. And if it did, please pass it on. Let someone else know they've got another shot too. Until next time, be good to yourself. You've got more in you than you could ever imagine. See you next week.